Now. I'm loving this new intro music, people. Hello and welcome to Market Madness, the podcast from Gimme Sport, where every day is like deadline day. And I'm Joel Bayer. Live alongside me is Gimme Sports senior football correspondent, Mr. Ben Jacobs. And just 4 days to go until the transfer deadline day is with us. So if you want to know the latest on all the deals in the Premier League and Europe, please make sure you stay tuned because this is the place to be. I want to get into it. It's Market Madness from Gimme Sport. Now. Ben, how are you, mate?
I'm good. You're buzzing. That music has woken you up for the entire day.
It really has, man. This is the second time I've heard it. Obviously, it's the second time I've been back with this new music, and I thought, wow, we are making some great progress here. Absolutely beautiful. You've come back. The beard is growing nicely as well. You know, like I love the different looks you give us, Ben, man. How have you been?
Yeah, basically, the cleaner cut I am, the earlier it is in the window, and the more disheveled I am, the later it is in the window.
Good. But we want to talk about transfers, man. So, you know, there's so much to come. We're going to be talking to royalty, Jeff Stelling as well, you know, during the interview. But first, we need to dive into the transfers. You can get your questions into Ben on our social media channels. We're live right now, us and the Sting Music. Ben, you're across everything that's happening in the final days of the window. But I want to start with Mr. Cole Palmer. Now, Liam Rosenior says he's happy at Chelsea. He's untouchable are the words. Are there any realistic chances that he might be set to leave Stamford Bridge, or should we just put all of that to bed?
Yeah, I think you can put all of that to bed. I know we've heard some reports out of Manchester that maybe Cole Palmer is unhappy and wants to go back up to Manchester because that's where some of his friends and family are. That's not my understanding. You just look at his reaction from last night when he got 2 superb assists as Chelsea got a big win against Napoli, and it's obvious that he's invested in the Chelsea project. Liam Rosenior was asked, is Cole Palmer untouchable? And is he happy at Chelsea in the build-up to that Napoli game? And he replied, yes and yes. And that's my understanding, that Cole Palmer is untouchable. Cole Palmer's going nowhere. Even if an offer came in, Chelsea would have no desire to sell. Palmer would have no desire to leave. So there's always going to be links, and there's always going to be clubs that are interested in Cole Palmer simply because he's Cole Palmer. But it's very simple, not for sale, no approach from Manchester United, and suggestions that Palmer is unhappy at Chelsea are, to my understanding, wide of the mark.
Don't tell Olivier Bazaglo, but you know he's my favorite player in the Premier League. You know that. Like, he is my number one. So wherever he goes, I don't support the team, but I support him individually. But sticking it with Chelsea, I want to say Kendry Paez is another player who could be on the move there.
Yeah, Kendry Paez is going to River Plate. That's my understanding. And I think this is a bit of a surprise in many ways because we knew that he'd come back from Strasbourg. But what the feeling was, speaking to sources maybe 2-3 weeks ago, was a move to England might be possible to kind of further help with his acclimatization. And now it turns out he's going to be going back to South America, to Argentina, to River Plate. This one is all agreed in principle. And Palmer, I think, had spoken to Kendry Paez even when he was at Strasbourg to kind of speak to him about long-term integration, and Reece James has had a conversation with him as well. So a lot of the senior Chelsea players have been quite invested in Kendry Paez because they think that he could be big for the football club one day. But in the short term, and with the World Cup in mind, the parties have basically agreed that a better option is to send Kendry Paez back to South America. And this will be a season-long loan, which is significant because remember, the Argentine Primera division begins in January and ends in December. So this will be a full calendar year loan. Kendry Paez to River Plate from Chelsea after being recalled from Strasbourg. That one is a done deal.
The man in the know, Ben. Now, sticking it with players in France, you've got France international, Jérémy Jacquet. That's how you say it in French, just in case you were wondering. Jérémy Jacquet, he's a player who's set for a move from Rennes. Chelsea and Liverpool are amongst those interested in the 20-year-old centre-back.
Yeah, so Liverpool are monitoring the situation for the summer. Chelsea want to get ahead of the market and do the deal now. Rennes want a record sale of 64 million euros or more, which would surpass the fee that they got for Jérémy Doku when he moved from Rennes to Manchester City. And talks between Chelsea and Jacquet and Chelsea and Rennes are ongoing. So what we're going to have to understand is, are Chelsea going to overpay effectively because their valuation is below 50 million euros in the final days of the window to get a starting centre-back now, or will they wait? And if they wait, there's a possibility that they try and pre-agree something or even sign the player now and then loan him back to Rennes. So this deal isn't only about the money, it's the fact that Rennes are competing for a spot in the Champions League, and they don't want a scenario where they lose the player, and that's detrimental to their chances of qualifying for that tournament. So this is about finding the right structure of a deal that satisfies Rennes, because they would rather keep the player until the summer. And if Chelsea don't do a deal now, it opens the door for possibly Bayern and very definitely Liverpool as well. But obviously Chelsea are trying to be aggressive and preempt any competition by doing the deal now if they can, even if the player doesn't actually join in this window.
Now, I don't know if during the show there's going to be questions that we have from the fans. I really do think that we should get something in, because they're a part of this. They're asking you live questions. You know, we want you guys to get involved. So if we can get those questions on the screen, let's do so. Market Madness. We've got one that's just come in. FPL Foxy, aka Robbie, with the Fox emoji. Will Manchester United extend Harry Maguire's current contract? Ooh, that's a tough question to ask, just because he's had a colossal performance against Arsenal. Does that warrant a new contract?
Well, I think there's a possibility. I mean, what we know is that Harry Maguire would be prepared to stay at Manchester United. It's Manchester United that have been delaying as they assess what they're going to do in the summer. And from Maguire's point of view, he would have signed last year. He wanted his future clarified before the World Cup. But Manchester United are debating, and that might be informed by Michael Carrick, but obviously any new manager that they bring in as well. So maybe if Ruben Amorim was still there, we'd have got a bit more clarity on Harry Maguire late last year or early into the new year. But now there's a whole new consideration. There is a willingness for Manchester United to engage in formal talks with Harry Maguire, and those have already started. So we can't discount him staying, but this seems to have been delayed a little bit due to the fact that Amorim's departed. Michael Carrick is only expected to be head coach until the end of the season, and as a consequence, a new manager may have to input, which means that privately Manchester United might want to move along the process to find out who that new manager is going to be before the end of the season, even though formally some of the candidates, particularly Thomas Tuchel, they won't really be able to lock in until after the World Cup if they go in that direction. So it's actually quite a complicated one. But certainly from Maguire's point of view, he's had the initial conversations about extending, and he would be open to staying at Old Trafford, but it all now depends on Manchester United.
Now, I'm going to keep reading them out, but I know that the fans do also want to know about Liverpool rumours. I just say stay tuned. We're going to be discussing everything across the border. And that was from, let me try to attempt to read this name, Manurazzi. Oh, Kufakutsi Wichi. I think I got that right. Kamuchichi. That's right. We will be talking Liverpool soon. I mean, there is a question from Brian Bandar. Will Liverpool sign a right back?
Yeah, I don't think they're going to go into the market and panic buy, that's for sure. The big thing last night was Jeremy Frimpong now being out on the sidelines. So Liverpool have got a bit of a defensive crisis, but there's no guarantee that they sign a player between now and the end of the window. Let's see, they might be opportunistic, and obviously they're lacking a little bit of depth, having also not entered the race at centre-back for Mark Gahey. But for now, I'm told it's all quiet on the Liverpool front, and they're not usually the kind of club in the market to be particularly impulsive. And that's why I think we might get a situation where they back what they've got, even if the Liverpool fans don't like it, and then do the bulk of their business in the summer. But it obviously can't be discounted, because Frimpong is going to be out for a period of time. We're waiting for the official confirmation as to how long, and that will naturally mean that Liverpool are again one short. So it's been a really difficult January for Liverpool, but they're sticking to their resolve. You know, throughout the whole month, we've heard talks of potentially Salah exiting, but he's going to stay. potentially a centre-back, but they didn't bid for Mark Gahey. Now a right-back, and obviously the possible exit of Andy Robertson at left-back contingent on whether Milos Kerkez can return. And at the moment, there's no breakthrough there. So as it stands, Robertson will stay. So it's fascinating because we've seen Liverpool add nobody at senior level, but we're also seeing Liverpool's strategy at play, which is calm and cautious and very deliberate, whereas other clubs maybe are a little bit more knee-jerk out of opportunism in the market. Liverpool have a plan, and at the moment they're sticking to it, and that isn't resulting in any senior arrivals in January.
Now, I know that Arsenal is going to be a big topic during this episode, not because I wrote it, but because we're going to have Tom Canton on, as I mentioned. But I do want to stick in an Arsenal question before then. Former Arsenal player, I would say, Brooke Norton-Cuffy. He's been impressing in the Serie A with Genoa, and that hasn't escaped the attention of clubs back here in England. Tell us more, please, Ben, if you can. Oh, he's done a Joe Bayer. He has done a Joe Bayer.
So this was an exclusive that I broke on Gimme Sport a few weeks ago. Brooke Norton-Cuffy is an ex-Arsenal Academy product, so it should be a player, Joel, that you know well. And in addition to that, he was at Chelsea for a little bit as well, and he's done really well at Genoa. He's played in nearly every game. He's played virtually 90 minutes in each of them as well. And my understanding is he's available for about 20 million euros. Everton, Newcastle, West Ham, 3 Premier League clubs, but don't discount Napoli and also Juventus as well. So you've got 5 teams chasing his signature, and in the final few days of the window, an exit is possible, providing that Genoa valuation is met. And I think for Everton, now Seamus Coleman is back, maybe a bit less urgency. West Ham have got 2 senior fullbacks over on that right-hand side, but they're looking for somebody a little bit more younger, even though I think at the moment, Aaron Wan-Bissaka, Kyle Walker-Peters, 2 excellent options for them, but they have to think long-term as well. And Newcastle have got Tino Livramento out, so naturally they're exploring whether or not they can add another right-sided fullback to kind of cover that vacuum until he returns. And a bit like Liverpool, Newcastle have got a horrible defensive crisis, so let's see whether they can do anything too in the final hours of the window. But Brooke Norton-Cuffy definitely one to watch and would be a really good signing, and I'm told that the player is open to both a move within Italy or back to England.
I want to see more fan questions on the screen. There we go. Okay, so this is from DJ Savg CFC Blues 6293. Shout out to you. Good morning to the both of you. Good Tag. I just want to ask Ben, does he see Chelsea doing any income signings before Monday's deadline? Oh, good one.
Yeah, it could happen. I think Chelsea are going to be really busy. We know that they released Raheem Sterling yesterday after a contract termination by mutual consent. And now there's lots of clubs that are interested in Sterling, but he has, up until this point, not been open to a move outside of England because his priority was to stay in London after that Arsenal loan. Now it's changed a little bit, and my understanding is that Sterling is open to a move in Europe, and Napoli, for example, are one of the clubs that are taking a look, but it will all depend on the finances. Then, as we've already said, Kendry Paez has gone to River Plate on loan as well. Chelsea still have a late option if they want to recall Mamadou Sarr. They were in the race for Douglas Luiz, but the player really only wanted Aston Villa in the end. So that's going to be another clue as to whether Chelsea come back in for more of a senior squad midfielder, given that Dario Asugo is only just coming back from injury and Romeo Lavia has been out as well. And Chelsea, like you said right at the top of the show, are also still in the market potentially for a new starting centre-back with Jérémy Jacquet an option. Let's see if they get that one over the line. I think at this stage it's more likely to be pre-agreed for the summer rather than right now, but money could obviously talk, and if Chelsea go high enough, Rennes might be persuaded to sell as well. So I think we're going to have to keep a really close eye on Chelsea right up until the final minutes of the window.
It's funny because it feels like this is the least amount of business that they've done since Roman Abramovich took over. Anyway, I want to make sure that we also give some news to the Tottenham fans. Now, I know that, there's reasons why I wouldn't want us to, but I can't ignore the Gimme Sports Spurs fans. So I want to ask reinforcements for them before 7 p.m. on Monday. Is that likely?
Yeah, I think Tottenham are also going to be really busy. The first thing is Antonin Kinski going to leave for West Ham United. There's a loan possibility there and talks are advanced, and that will mean that Tottenham we'll have to bring in another goalkeeper. So that's one area that we should definitely be keeping an eye on. They're still looking at midfielders and attackers as well, despite the arrival of Conor Gallagher. Midfield, I think, will be difficult, but in the summer they can assess whether they want the option to buy João Paulinho. If they do, then they've got Paulinho and Conor Gallagher. If they don't, then they'll definitely be in the market for another number 6. And then you've got Akliouche, who can play on the right or the left. And remember, Mohamed Kudus is injured, and the likes of Savinho and Yan Diomande, 2 other players that Tottenham really like. I'm not so sure that either of those latter 2 deals will be possible between now and the end of the window. Akliouche maybe for the right price, but then when Kudus comes back, he'd have to be pushed centrally or over to the left-hand side. So that would be a consideration, because he prefers playing on the right-hand side. And I think Tottenham's long-term plans are to find a left-sided attacker. And then let's see where we stand with Jean-Philippe Mateta as well. Tottenham have certainly discussed him internally. It's Forest that are advancing at the moment. And obviously, if, as expected, Jørgen Strand Larsen goes to Crystal Palace, that will open the door for a Mateta exit from Selhurst Park. With Forest negotiating, Juve and Milan have looked in the past. I'm not aware that Tottenham have opened formal talks, but we know in the long run they want a number 9. So let's see what they decide to do. But again, a bit like Chelsea, I expect Tottenham to be quite busy, as they still look at the moment anyway to back Thomas Frank after another good win last night.
Yeah, as long as Mateta doesn't go to Aston Villa, I'm absolutely fine wherever he goes, because that's
Villa got Tammy Abraham, remember?
I know, yeah, but I heard they were linked with both though. So I thought they were
really. It was always one or the other.
Okay, cool. Well, that's good. Well, we'll see how that goes. But also, I want to bring it on to Man United. Okay, so they've been linked with a whole host of players since Michael Carrick replaced Ruben Amorim, but we've yet to see any movements in or out at Old Trafford. Is that going to remain the case? There's obviously the Rennes teenager Keita Miet that they're linked with. Could Onana be set for a return to Inter? What's that looking like?
Yeah, no Onana news at the moment. I think Manchester United would obviously like to resolve that one come the summer. Mateta, as you say, is a name that is appreciated by Manchester United. Sources have downplayed that anything might be possible in the final days of the window. Midfield was always about opportunism. They were offered a couple of players that they didn't bite on. There was never anything really in the James Garner links for this window, and as expected, he signed a new deal at Everton, so no real return there. And then Ruben Loftus-Cheek was a player that was offered to Manchester United, but the interest was not reciprocal. Wilfred Ndidi was a player that Manchester United, like Everton, were in talks with before he went to Besiktas over the summer, so that perhaps a possibility, and maybe even more so if Ole Gunnar Solskjaer got the managerial job rather than Michael Carrick, because Solskjaer, remember, was the boss at Besiktas when Ndidi was signed. But really, if any surprises are going to happen, Manchester United have always billed it as they won't do anything, so they're setting it up for nothing. But if they move at the last minute, it was always going to be because Michael Carrick was involved in the recruitment conversation and wanted something a little bit more short term. So let's see whether they pull out a surprise. They've been in conversation with various midfielders to see whether anything is possible, but they're not going to panic buy. And then obviously Joshua Zirkzee is another story to watch, the player looking for game time between now and the World Cup. And I think with Ruben Amorim, he just wanted him to stay, making an exit unlikely. But let's see whether Carrick sanctions that exit. Now Manchester United are flying, they're scoring goals, they've got the ability to have a pathway to first team football for Chido Obi. They have Cunha and Mbumo, who can both lead the line if it's not Benjamin Sesko. So maybe Carrick will be a little bit more open to a Zirkzee exit in the final days of the window compared to Ruben Amorim. So that could still be one to watch.
I have to say, we just spoke about, obviously, Villa and them getting Tammy Abraham. I'm a little bit concerned, right? So in the last couple of weeks, Ben, I would say my team, Arsenal, we've only obtained 2 points in 3 games, and it's squeaky bum time. So Villa, City, I want to know everything they're doing, ins and outs, full detail. Do they have any transfer news coming in? I know that they're linked with David Luiz. Oh, man. You know what? This would be lovely if I could hear you. It really, really would.
Villa have done the bulk of their business, and Douglas Luiz is the one that's already come in. That was announced yesterday. and a signing really that Aston Villa knew once they decided to enter the race they could win ahead of Chelsea. Chelsea were kind of the first suitor and Villa backed off, and then after the latest injury to Yuri Tielemans, Villa said, okay, we are going to now enter these conversations, and they knew that Luis was willing to come back. So that's a great deal for Villa. Tammy Abraham has already arrived as well. Villa had to pay a little bit more because they were negotiating with Besiktas, not Roma in the end, due to an obligation to buy, but he was the first choice over Jean-Philippe Mateta. So I'm expecting now Villa to be quite quiet in these final days of the window because they've laid a lot of the groundwork. We know that they don't plan to sign Harvey Elliott permanently either. And for Man City, they've had a great window so far with the arrivals of Marc Guéhi and Antoine Semenyo. Next on the list for Manchester City is a central midfielder, and Elliot Anderson is one of their targets for the summer. And this is in light of the fact that we have a departure, or an expected one anyway, of Bernardo Silva, who's going to leave Manchester City as a free agent. It doesn't appear that City will offer a new deal, and Bernardo Silva wants to leave as well. So that's going to be, like Kevin De Bruyne, another emotional goodbye. Some sources say that he'll be going to Benfica, which would be a return. Others say that there's interest from Saudi Arabia, who are going to be in for a big summer. And I think it'll be a lot easier for the Saudi players to move to that league after the World Cup, the foreigners anyway. So what we're going to see, I think, is quite mad movement in the summer from a few Premier League clubs for midfielders. Chelsea are there, and Manchester United obviously wanting 2 elite midfielders. And again, some of these players, Casemiro maybe even as well, that have said no to Saudi in the past, might have a slightly different perspective come summer after the World Cup. So the City business, I think, is more now to watch for the summer because they've already had a really productive January.
I'll tell you what, I would take Bernardo Silva. I really would, for a season at Arsenal. I don't think you. I'm not saying we need him, but I don't think you can go wrong with that kind of experience. John Duran, he only left Villa in the summer, but it looks as if he could be on the move again.
Yeah, I think John Duran kind of went to Saudi Arabia and then didn't enjoy it there and then got a loan move. So it was always going to be the case that he might be a name available in the market. Whether or not anything happens in the winter, we'll have to wait and see. He went to Fenerbahce. They were one of the only clubs, because there's a lot of money at the moment in Turkey, that could afford the wage and the package that he was looking for. And as a consequence, it just suited all parties. But that move was never necessarily meant to be permanent. And there's obviously a few Premier League clubs watching very closely. West Ham, for example, had made an actual bid for John Duran before he went to Saudi Arabia, but Tati Castellanos and Pablo have now arrived as well. But if, for example, Callum Wilson went during the summer, they might be back, but I doubt it's going to be something that we're talking about during the winter. Still, Duran is really well compensated, so meeting his personal demands are going to be a factor that maybe are putting off some clubs, especially mid-season, the ones that maybe have got PSR concerns. But at the moment, it's all quiet on the John Duran front, but the market's well aware that he's an opportunity. So let's see if there's a twist in the last few days of the window. If not, it's a player that I would expect to move again come summer, and there will be Premier League interest. Everton as well could be another club to watch.
I'm sure. Now, you told us last week about Ryan's move to Bournemouth, and you were right. It actually happened. This is why you are the man in the know. And yeah, you know what? There's still some money left over from the Antoine Semenyo transfer. So could there be more activity, would you say, for Bournemouth?
Well, I think Bournemouth are probably done for this window now. And given the amount of upheaval that they had over the summer, they really have had a fantastic window once again. And getting Ryan, by the way, is no mean feat, because this is a player that a lot of people say is a generational talent. And you could argue that's illustrated by the fact that he has a release clause of 100 million euros, which will be valid in his second season at the football club. So Bournemouth are definitely now the kind of club that are attractive to these young players, and they've made a big emphasis to try and push on the South American market. And that's been important because they feel that they offer an environment where young players, even when they're up against teams that have multi-club, can come and play immediately. So if you think about Kendry Paez, who we mentioned before, goes to Strasbourg first, has to wait for his Chelsea opportunity. Bournemouth have said to Ryan, you're the replacement for Antoine Semenyo. So he backs himself and he's going to get minutes very quickly. And Bournemouth's recruitment has been really strong, which is why there's so much interest in a number of their players. So it'll be about taking stock now for Bournemouth. And then in the summer, We're expecting them to add another centre-back because Marcus Senesi is expected to leave as a free agent. And Justin Kluivert might be drawing some interest as well. So that's another story to watch for the summer. Bayer Leverkusen have looked in the past too. So once again, priority for Bournemouth will be about keeping hold of what they've got, trying to somehow get Andoni Iraola to extend, trying to ensure that they have a succession plan after Senesi departs, and then continuing to do what they've always done really well, which is finding these young talents, giving them immediate Premier League opportunities and watching them grow in value. And I think that Andoni Iraola has a proven track record of that. And this was partly why Ryan wanted to come, to work under that manager, even if he ends up leaving during the summer, and to get that ability from day one to get regular Premier League football. And I think this is going to be a really intriguing signing to watch because, like I said before, Ryan comes with a big reputation.
Let's see how he does. We're going to be looking at the EFL a little later on because there's some surprisingly big moves happening there. But what about the rest of Europe? Ben, I'm hearing Moussa Diaby to Inter potentially. Saudi's interest in Dembele. What have you got for us for Europe?
Yeah, I think the Moussa Diaby one is the most interesting story. As you say, Inter have made an offer. It's a loan with a 35 million euros option to buy that could become a conditional obligation under certain circumstances. Al Ittihad have rejected the offer as it stands. And by the way, if Diaby goes, I think there'll be a push to sign a wide player. And in the past, Al Nassr and Al Ittihad have really liked Gabriel Martinelli. I don't think anything will be possible mid-season, but that could be one to watch. But at the moment, a bit like N'Golo Kante to Fenerbahce, Al Ittihad the roadblock to that particular deal. So it'll be intriguing to see whether time runs out there or whether eventually, because the player wants that move, Al Ittihad sell and then try and sign an important foreign player in the last few days of the market. The other thing is that Al Ittihad have had their foreign quota of players full, so the likes of Fabinho and N'Golo Kante staying have restricted the ability for Al Ittihad to add players in these final days of the market, whereas summer and again after the World Cup will be a different story. Over in Saudi, I broke an exclusive that outlined 50 players that Saudi are looking at, foreign stars after the World Cup, most of them under the age of 30. There's a few exceptions like Mo Salah, Robert Lewandowski, and Ousmane Dembele is on that list, as I revealed, Vinicius Jr. as well, and Al Ali might be the allocated club for him. So 2023, a lot of people were caught by surprise by the ambition of the Saudi market. And then many people have said to me since, why have they not repeated that kind of window now? And the answer is because there's a foreign quota capping the number of any age players at 8. But also, those players got given 3-year contracts. So the natural point of squad refresh is now, summer 2026, phase 2. And instead of it being about get any stars over the age of 30, now the idea is to find peak age footballers predominantly. So this is a real test because it's like phase 2 of the Saudi market. Can they go and get peak age footballers? And if they can, then the level of the Saudi Pro League will rise and people maybe will start to see it as one of the top 10 or top 5 leagues in the world. So I'm expecting a really active Saudi summer market, and Ousmane Dembele, Vinicius Jr., Mo Salah, Robert Lewandowski, Amadou Onana, Yuri Tielemans and more, Gabriel Martinelli, like I mentioned before, all could be players to watch.
Oh man, I have to say, Ben, that is some really good transfer information there. I think we should go into my new favorite sting though for the news section. Can we do that? Can we do that for me, please? Let's hit it.
Click the fingers.
Oh, that's brilliant. I absolutely love it. Now, this is our last Thursday show of this transfer window, but we've got 2 shows coming up for you on deadline day. So Olivia and Ben will be bringing you up to speed with the early business for what you should be expecting on the day at 8 a.m. UK time. Then I'm back again midday for more updates on any of the developments. Okay. So as with today's show, we're live on Facebook, we're on YouTube and X, and we're going to be doing the same thing. And if you're listening back in the future, then please do make sure you're following us on @GiveMeSport so you can see when the live shows are taking place and get up to speed with the news as it happens. For more information on any of the stories discussed, head over to Give Me Sports website and make sure you're following across all socials. Really important because it could pop out at any time, so you want to be there. We can also get your questions in, as we've been doing during this show, your comments into us, and yeah, just make sure you enjoy it and keep on watching. But now, Arsenal, we have Kai Havertz back, and you saw him yesterday firing a nice, lovely goal. It's like having a new signing again. But do recent results mean that Mikel Arteta might be tempted to go into the transfer window to do some more business? We got here the main man, Tom Canton, the Arsenal reporter for Football London. He's joining us. Tom, get yourself into our office, please. How you doing, mate? You okay?
How are you doing, guys? You good?
I'm doing great. That's a lovely setup you got there, mate.
Oh, thank you very much.
Oh, my God. You're showing us all up, mate. What is going
I'll do my best,
on
mate.
here?
I'll do my best.
Oh my gosh, really good that. I wanted to start with asking, with myself and Ben, obviously we're going to be asking you the questions, but as Arsenal fans, natural default might be to worry about the wheels, acting as if they're going to fall off. I mentioned earlier on in the show, 3 games, 2 points, losing against Man United, not looking good. But tell us that's not the case this season, please.
Every team goes through their little challenges and slips and slumps, and we got to hope that this is the end of Arsenal's one during this winter period. Arsenal have actually got a bit of a history of having slumps during the winter period. In the last 5 seasons, they've endured 3 or 4 game winless runs. So this isn't really anything out of the ordinary for Arsenal. We just hope that what is out of the ordinary is that this time this slump doesn't lead to them finishing second once again. And they're positioning themselves still very strongly. 4 points clear at the top of the table. They've got the easiest run of the 3 top contenders for the title between now and May, and position themselves very well in the Champions League, the FA Cup, and of course the League Cup, of which they're in the semi-final second leg, having already won at Stamford Bridge. So for Arsenal, it doesn't feel great right now, but I think the nerves are perhaps greater than the reality of Arsenal's supposed downfall.
I have to ask as well, 3 games, like I said, without a win in the Premier League. The Nottingham Forest game and the Man United game, for me, big standouts. But given the inconsistency of the other teams in the title race, was it a missed opportunity? Or do you think it's not going to be too damaging in the long term?
Oh, there's no doubt it was a huge missed opportunity for Arsenal to maintain that 7-point gap. But that was the same when they went to Forest. They could have opened that gap further. It was the same when they hosted Liverpool. That gap could have been wider. Arsenal could be 11 points clear right now. Rather than that, they are 4 points clear because of the mess of the last 3 games. Manchester City's win at the weekend over Wolves was their first in 5 matches. So it's not as if they've got the juggernaut that was Manchester City of 2-3 seasons ago, chasing them and ultimately beating them to the punch in May. So I think Arsenal can take solace in that. They can also take solace in the fact that pretty much everybody is now available for them. Last night against Kairat Almaty, we saw Ricardo Calafiori and Kai Havertz both start. That was Havertz's first start in 357 games. Not games. Imagine it was 357 games. That'd be crazy. But days. It was just great to see him back on the field. And I think that will bring a lot of encouragement, a lot of excitement, and a lot of momentum back into that forward line and give Mikel Arteta more options, because the options that he's had at centre forward have not been firing at their very best, or as much as we would have hoped they would have been by this point in the season.
Tom, good to see you. I just want to talk quickly about Ethan Nwaneri and the backstory behind this very intriguing move to Olympique Marseille, because my sort of understanding at the beginning of the window was that Nwaneri signed a new deal. He was told he'll get opportunities on the right, but also through the centre. And that's partially why in the early stages of the window, Arsenal didn't do the Eberici Eze deal. Then they sign Eze, Madueke's in decent form, and Saka is fit as well. So did it just suit all parties to send Nwaneri on loan? And is there any chance in the summer that Arsenal might entertain offers for a permanent exit?
Yeah, so like yourself, at the beginning of the transfer window this January, it didn't seem like Ethan Nwaneri was going to go anyway. In fact, Arsenal had knocked back some approaches. West Ham are one team. My colleague Ryan Taylor at the Mirror and Football.London reported that as well, that Arsenal had kind of knocked back these approaches. It did seem, though, when he started to be not included in matchday squads other than the Champions League expanded bench, that he was probably due to leave the club. And when a side like Marseille, who have had such success with the likes of William Saliba, having joined them on loan and done such a good job there to kind of return to Arsenal and the player that he is now, it was a great opportunity. Mikel Arteta agreed that Roberto De Zerbi and his philosophy was a great fit for Nwaneri as well, where he could learn and really kind of refine his trade and his craft. And we saw him score that goal on his debut as well against Lens the other day. It's a shame that Marseille have now gone out of the Champions League, courtesy of that absolutely crazy goal for Benfica against Real Madrid that knocked Marseille out of the competition entirely. So they have less gains perhaps than Arsenal would have hoped, but still, it's going to be a really good opportunity for him. He actually was quite close, my understanding is, to leaving in the summer. There was a lot of noise around Chelsea in the summer last year, but actually Borussia Dortmund, my understanding was, were the most likely contender to sign Nwaneri last summer, and there was a real possibility that was going to happen. However, the club did convince him to stay, and all parties agreed on that new deal, and the hope is that he returns at the end of this season a better player, more refined and better, and ready to take on the challenge of competition.
And then a word perhaps on the potential summer business, because it feels like it's a quiet January for Arsenal. We know that they've been looking for quite some time for maybe a starting left winger, even though Madueke can switch sides and Eze can play out wide as well. And presumably, Tom, that means Gabriel Martinelli and or Leandro Trossard will have to leave. And then a young number 9 maybe as well, or any form of number 9. And Gabriel Jesus has perhaps a bit of a question mark over his future as well. So is that your understanding, that summer rather than now, maybe a striker and very possibly a left winger are 2 positions that Arsenal are working on?
Yeah, and potentially a central midfielder as well is another area that Arsenal will be keen on for the summer also, to add into, because, Mikel Merino's not getting any younger. At this point, they signed him as an experienced player, so he may too, in the coming years, be looking to leave. So they'll need a midfielder to come in also in those deeper positions. Norgaard's only on a short-term contract. So I think that with the forward areas, Antoine Semenyo was a player the club were keen on, but only for the summer. It wasn't for the January window. And now with him moving permanently to Manchester City, of course, that's not a deal that's possible. There's been some names kind of banded around. Kenan Yildiz of Juventus is a player that the club have certainly watched and liked, but nothing formal has really extended beyond just that interest in scouting right now. Andrea Roberta has already recruited somebody in the sense of Maurizio Micheli. He's joined the club from Napoli as part of their head of scouting, so he's going to be helping Andrea Berta to find some top talents to add in the summer. And yeah, that centre forward role, we've heard rumours and noise around the likes of Julian Alvarez being looked at from Atletico Madrid, although that would be a very expensive deal in excess of 100 million euros if Arsenal were trying to tempt Atletico into selling. But you're right, Gabriel Jesus' contract is up in the summer. But when I was in Milan last week to speak to Gabriel Jesus ahead of the game against Inter Milan, he was very open and forward about the idea of wanting to extend his contract. Whether that happens is another question, but he certainly seems very keen to stay, and considering he's on a very healthy wage, that's not entirely surprising.
Now, I've got one name for you, and if we get this guy, I will be putting his name on the back of my shirt. Julian Alvarez. What is the news with that? Is he coming to my football club, yes or no?
I wish transfers were as simple as a yes or no answer, Joe. I really do. And if I was, like yourself, in a position to be wanting a player, Julian Alvarez would be top of my list, as well. The reality is, and James Ollie reported this story for ESPN the other week, that Arsenal do have a genuine interest in the player. He's a player that's been on Andrea Berta's keenness for quite some time prior to his arrival at Arsenal as well, and was, of course, involved in the processes. There was other people involved in the hierarchy, perhaps more so than Andrea Berta when he moved to Spain from Manchester City. But I think that that's a move that he wanted to kind of raise his level and his stature, and he's certainly done that. But I think at just his mid-20s now, there's another level that Alvarez can go to, and that can be with some unfinished business back in the Premier League. Arteta's definitely a player that would appreciate the style of player that Alvarez is, and it might be that he's a better fit than Victor Gyökeres is looking for that forward line right now. He can play in other positions, not just centre forward, and that might also apply and really be keen for Arteta to get a player of that profile. So yeah, Alvarez, I'm not going to tell you yes, Joel, but I'll tell you that he's certainly a player to watch for this summer and with Arsenal.
You know what? That's good enough for me so far. But listen, Tom, I want to say thank you very much for joining us. It's probably been my best episode because we haven't focused so much on Arsenal in a long time. But yeah, no, honestly, can you please let the people know where they can find you?
Yeah, of course. Nice to speak to you both. And yeah, you can find me at football.london or in the Mirror, of course, or my personal YouTube channel at The Gooner Talk.
Brilliant stuff.
Thanks, Tom.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. And next, we have some breaking news.
Perfectly timed as ever, Joel. And yeah, some breaking news. So Crystal Palace have verbally agreed a £45 million plus 5 million in add-ons fee with Wolves for striker Jørgen Strand Larsen. Now, this was negotiated on behalf of Wolves by Jorge Mendes, so via intermediaries. And now Wolves are waiting for a formal offer, which is obviously expected to match the numbers in the verbal agreement. And if all goes according to plan, therefore, Strand Larsen will move to Selhurst Park. And that should open up the door for Jean-Philippe Mateta to depart. Nottingham Forest were the club advancing. It's not done yet between Forest and Mateta, but naturally things will have to move quite fast because we've only got a couple of days left in the window. And if it isn't to be Forest, Serie A clubs have been looking. Milan last year, Juventus earlier in the window as well. But Palace are about to break their transfer record again after signing Brennan Johnson for about £35 million earlier in the window. And that kind of outlay will likely mean it's going to be offset by a Jean-Philippe Mateta fee. Let's see whether that's the 40 million or even a bit more that Palace were hoping for. But Strand Larsen to Crystal Palace looking likely. Leeds not prepared to go above 40 million for the Wolves striker. Now we're just waiting for the formal offer, and then that one will be a done deal.
Oh man, Ben, I want to say thank you very much. That is the kind of breaking news that we want to hear. But I also want to say to everybody watching, this is it for this week's Market Madness show. I have to say you've been absolutely fantastic. Ben, superstar. I'm looking forward to seeing you again next week. Like I said, I'll be back at lunchtime on Monday for our second transfer deadline special. But before that, you'll be able to join Olivia Bazarglo from 8 a.m. UK time on the final day of the transfer window too. Until then, you can listen back on your podcast app of your choice. Just search for Market Madness. For more info on any of the stories we've discussed and much more, please head over to givemesport.com. See you next time. Peace.